So, Steven Crowder has a video series, or rather a kind of a shtick, where he goes around saying, change my mind, change my mind, change my mind, which is all very good as a catalyst, but I think it's kind of a distillation of the sort of highly rhetoric-based discourse that goes on in the United States and elsewhere, and probably it's not really even anything new. Um, and I hate to pick on Steven Crowder because he's not really that bad of a dude or really egregious in this way. It's just that that's the thing I came across and saw, and it got me to thinking about where what people do is they have a framework and they have certain like confidence in what they're saying. And so they go forward and present this case, and then people listen to it, and what they take away is, wow, this person made this really, really strong case. But what that doesn't allow is room for nuance, because oftentimes when you present a case that strongly, the other person comes at you with their own jingoisms, and you just haven't really understood the issue. Now, you'd have to look at videos that Crowder does to see where this actually occurs, and I probably will try to do that at some point in the future. I don't really want to be one of those channels that picks apart other people's videos, because not because I have like some kind of haughty, like I'm better than that. There's nothing wrong with looking at somebody's videos and talking about what they're saying, and even if you get snarky, it's just a solid commentary. But I want to kind of veer away from that because, well, I just think it's time to have more in-depth conversations, and even people like Steven Crowder and others do this, but it's just that the balance of information and entertainment, I think, is kind of askew towards the entertainment side. And based on what I watch, I'm definitely guilty of like wanting to be entertained all the time. So you cannot really blame people for that. But what you can do is try to proactively yourself go out there and be the change you want to see in the world. God, I hate that nonsense. It's not a bad sentiment. It's just often done by pretension, with pretension by really pretentious people. Anyhow, so what am I gonna do now? I don't know. It's just a very simple point that I wanted to make, and I've made it, and now my brain is like, well, you're only 2 minutes into the video. Who's gonna want to watch a 2-minute video? Okay. So here's kind of like why I'm not on the whole Steven Crowder train. Like, I absolutely support his rights to free speech. I think that what's happening to him in terms of people trying to go after his channel and his livelihood is wrong. But he's kind of a neocon from what I've gathered, And I'm not on board with it because we have demonstrable proof that this domino theory of warfare, this kind of hyper-militarization, doesn't really work. Even McNamara, I think it was on Charlie Rose or someplace like that, back in 1995, and he pretty much expressly said, hey, this whole thing where we thought that we could prevent, further conflicts and escalations and regimes and things, that doesn't really work and leads to bad consequences. And we've seen that repeated again and again with Afghanistan and Iraq. Various nations have tried to invade Afghanistan, but Crowder seems to be on board the kind of neocon warhawk train. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I misgather that, but he was pro Guantanamo Bay, which, yes, not all the people working in Guantanamo Bay that are the guards are vicious, evil people, and not all the prisoners there are there for a wrong reason. It still doesn't change the fact that there's problems in that system, and they need to be pointed out, and the way that Crowder was presenting it when I watched a particular segment seemed to be kind of a really polishing a PR move for Guantanamo Bay, which maybe everybody needs to be advocated for. So it's not that big of a deal, but I just kind of feel like that's where his rhetoric comes into play to outweigh the nuance that needed to be there. Again, I'd have to revisit because I watched this some time ago, but I just keep on seeing Steven Crowder everywhere, and it reminded me of this kind of culture that Steven Crowder didn't just develop. He's just good at it. And that's, his success in a certain kind of style of communication shouldn't necessarily be held against him. But I feel that we need, as consumers and as creators, to focus more on the nuanced stuff. And watch in the near future as I continue to make videos on various topics, people are like, "Well, look at what you're doing. You're just as bad," and that might happen. I'm not perfect, but I certainly will try. To give you kind of an idea of my political stances, I think that the United States Constitution is kind of the best thing that we have going in terms of a system of government, in terms of securing the rights of man, because it developed out of a certain Enlightenment philosophy that took a long time to kind of gestate, digest, however you want to look at it from an analogy perspective. And while we need to have flexibility, we can't deviate too far from that. We have to be very strong on free speech. We have to be very strong on the rights of citizens to arm themselves, on all of those kinds of things. Again, when you're arming yourself, you don't necessarily probably need a bazooka. There's limits on that. But to a reasonable degree, to be able to defend yourself and to be able to go hunting and whatever is well within your rights. And there's really no reason, and there's always bad precedents for when people ban guns. It just doesn't really solve very much, because places like Chicago and elsewhere where they have strict gun laws, well, there's a lot of gun violence because criminals don't obey the law. It's a very simple argument. It sounds like a talking point, but it's a talking point for a reason, because it's true. But again, as I say, the talking point, there's room to discuss nuance about it. Like, okay, well, blah, 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 where can we have it, where can we not, etc. But at the core of it, you have to keep your eye on the prize of not majority rule, but rule by a set of principles that protect individual rights. Okay? And this is a very normal, very American thing. Very American perspective, but for some reason, recently it's become associated with being really right-wing. And for instance, I don't know if it would work, which is why I'm not entirely on board with it, but I think that universal healthcare of some sort would probably be a good idea. We have all these wars, all these other things that we're doing, and yes, we need a strong military, and yes, we need a military presence. I'm actually with George Washington, where we don't want to get into foreign interventions, but we still, because of the nature of the world and the reach that nations now have, due to the kind of arms that, battleships and things that are in the various navies of the world, we do need to have a strong military. But how strong? Like, our military spending is ridiculous, and we need a few more social services, not like just handing stuff out, but taxes pay for the military and for roads and things like that. Why not allocate resources to help people pay their medical bills, which would free up money for them to use in the economy? Because what's happening now is people who are already in debt are going further in debt to afford living, and they're in huge debt because of the stupid medical system. Now, again, this is what I'm saying about nuance. I don't necessarily even think you would need universal healthcare, but that's the only thing that I've seen proffered. And the intermediary things I haven't really seen fleshed out, where a private system would not become as predatory as it is at the current state. I've literally been in a hospital at the financial assistance center one time when I had an accident with my leg, and a nurse walked in and she had no idea what was going on. She works in that system. And, nurses don't make a lot of money, but you would think that they'd have at least something approaching a middle-class income, maybe slightly above lower middle class, but still enough to pay medical bills, like for somebody that seemed to be healthy. I think that people have pet philosophies like bootstrapping, or like, oh, we have to help everybody. It's one or the other. And these two things jingoistically go at each other. And then there's a third thing of a guy babbling online about how there's too much jingoism and there's too much bifurcation. We just need to go ahead and start really almost, I don't know if scientifically is the right word, but in a really focused manner, go through like flow charts and just, because we got to start acting like adults. And I know that there's a certain visceral element that needs to come into play to hold people's attention, including my own. But man, it's high time for... It sounds so douchey because it's like, oh, well, I'm the leader of a thought revolution. That's not what I'm trying to say, because I know a lot of people have a similar mindset and want to see similar things, but it's time for change. Hope and change. Fuck. God damn it. I don't want to be nerdy vlog Obama. Damn it. All right. Take care, everybody.